Greetings, YouTube. I just saw somebody posting on Instagram about the, dire predictions for climate change at the end of or the midpoint of this century, not to mention the end of the century. And it got me thinking. They were discussing the hard date of 2050, but it got me thinking about the prediction that in the United States of America, the population will become majority minority in 2040, which means that white folks will no longer be 50+% of the population. We will fall below the 50 plus mark, which then means that there will be no majority of one specific ethnicity. If you want to call white people an ethnicity, I don't know if you want to or not. But Caucasian. We are genetic mutants after all, because most of us can still consume dairy products well after weaning. I can no longer consume them. Sadly, I miss cheese and ice cream, but such is life. And it got me thinking that if there are folks that are viewing the end of the world as when the planet can no longer support human life, and that isn't the end of the world. Their world is not until the sun goes red giant. And that's if humanity just doesn't move the planet at that point, if we're still here. But if we're not here because we've made the world uninhabitable for human life, or something else hasn't evolved in that time to move the planet in the future, that will be the effective, end of life for humanity. We've made ourselves extinct. We can do that. But for some people in the United States, they're viewing the end of the world as 2040, when that percentage of white people falls below 50%, where white people will no longer have the demographic dominance that we have right now. Now, we're going to continue to have the political and the economic and the social dominance because we have established a system of white supremacy that has put white people into positions of power far above their demographic presence. There are far more, for example, white cis dudes in Congress than there are white cis dudes in the population. If you look at the population demographics in the United States of America, white cis dudes make up less than half of the white people there are. And yet there are a higher percentage of that in Congress. White cis dudes have been using the white supremacist system really effectively and have put themselves in the position of powers, and that's going to continue well past 2040. I sadly foresee an apartheid-like situation going on in the United States, particularly with the current trend in the United States to do everything within the power of the GOP to undermine or eliminate the voting power of anyone that isn't a white, straight, cis conservative, particularly men. I mean, the GOP has floated hundreds of anti-abortion bills in the last 10 years or so. Some of them have been into power, most of them haven't. And the ones that have been placed into law have been, of course, fought by right-thinking people because, women should actually have autonomy and agency, a concept that really bothers a whole lot of conservative folks. But for the segment of the United States of America made up of conservative white people, 2040 is the end of the world. It's not going to be for the rest of us. And I'll be here in 20 years with any luck. I'll be 75, but I could hit 85, realistically. My family is not known for being very long-lived. My wife's family is. Her grandmother made it to 104. So she'll be here long after I will. But I could see 2040, and I could lift a glass of bubbly apple juice, I don't drink alcohol, in celebration of the fact that white people will no longer be the demographic dominant that they are, and that maybe, just maybe, we should start listening to all the folks that are currently minorities. Now, for all the white people out there that are afraid that the people who are currently minority groups will do to the white people what the white people have been doing to those minority groups for the last 400 years, maybe we should change the laws so that no group, regardless of their demographic dominance, can adversely affect the civil liberties and human rights of any other person. How about we do that? How about we establish a system where every single person, regardless of their demographic strength or weakness, is protected, and that their civil liberties and human rights are inviolate? Why don't we do that? Wouldn't that be awesome? And it would protect your white supremacist ass in the future, because you are scared shitless of the world doing to you what you have been doing to the world. Now, I have never endorsed white supremacist positions, but I have benefited from them. And I have committed acts of racism in my past that I am not proud of. And I still benefit from the system of white supremacy in the United States of America. My life is immeasurably easier because I am a white, straight, cis dude. I can walk down the street with the level of protection, of social armor, that brown people and women and gay people and trans people will never share. Not until we change the system that we all have the same protections. So for all the white folks out there that are terrified that in 2040 their world is going to collapse around them, your best defense from that mythological, apocalyptic worldview is to ensure that every single person in the United States of America and the world at large has their civil liberties and human rights protected. So why don't we try that? Or are you stuck in that meme that shows the guy nervously looking at two buttons? One button says relinquishing your current worldview, and the other says experiencing the apocalypse of 2040, and you can't decide which one to press. I'm going to suggest you end your worldview. You end your current supremacy of the system to ensure that your future is protected. Not that I imagine that minority groups are actually going to do to you what you think they're going to do, because I don't think they are. Because people who have suffered often understand that suffering and don't want to impose it on anyone else. But those in power, they'll do anything to keep that power. And when they realize they're going to lose that power, for them, that really does seem like the end of the world. But suddenly finding yourself just another citizen is not the end of the world. It's just life. And you'll survive it. Of course, we don't do anything about the climate change, and 50 or 60 years after that point, there'll be maybe no one left here at all, so maybe we should work on that as well. But right now, let's work on preserving civil liberties and human rights for everybody, so that your white nationalist ass can feel secure in your mythological apocalyptic end of the world.